I'm really pleased you didn't ask me what's nature.
Hi, I'm Katel Le Goulven, and this is Mission to Change, the show where I hear from people who turn business into a force for good and learn about their journey to make it happen. Nature loss poses both risks and opportunities for business, now and in the future. More than half of the world's economic output, $44 trillion, is moderately or highly dependent on nature. In this episode, I speak with Simon Zadek. He's the chair of Finance for Biodiversity, and he's on a mission to make nature count in finance.
Hi, I'm Simon Zadek. I am the chair of Finance for Biodiversity, a non-profit platform established in 2019 to make sure that financial institutions count nature in their financing decisions.
Simon has an impressive career, working both with the private and the public sectors. He's held a number of high-level positions with the Task Force on Nature-Related Financial Disclosures, with the Executive Office of the UN Secretary General, or with the UN Environmental Programme. But his interest and inspiration started very young, at age 9 to be precise.
The first book on economics that I can remember reading, given to me by my father at the age of about 9, was a book called The Sovereign State of ITT, ITT being the International Telecommunications Company, the largest telecommunications company in the US and I think the world, written by a wonderful British investigative journalist called Anthony Sampson. And that book was essentially revealing the role that ITT had had during the Second World War and their complicity in working closely with the Nazi regime. So it was, in a sense, a piece on corporate responsibility before I was really thinking about corporate responsibility at all. Now, of course, many years then passed when I was not thinking or working on this topic.
Simon started off working in a think tank studying workers' rights and business responsibility. He then became a sustainability auditor for the very first sustainability report produced by The Body Shop and Ben & Jerry's. These two companies in the 90s took social concerns such as human rights and animal welfare into consideration, and they were really ahead of the game with social business responsibility. The shift in Simon's career from social to environment came later.
I think really from the late 90s, early noughties, the climate agenda was increasingly cutting across much of the work I was doing around business responsibility. Rio had already happened, so we already had the language of sustainability. And so this was increasingly filtering into much of the work that the corporate accountability community was undertaking. And of course, social, environmental, climate issues were all rapidly coming into a convergent state with many of these different organizations.
Simon was working within businesses, trying to incorporate social and environmental responsibility. However, he soon realized that to make true change, entire industry shifts were needed. And the sector that could have the biggest impact was finance.
It was somewhat later, around 2006, 7, 8, that arguably the critical shift happened where I realized perhaps far too late in my work, but with some time to go, that it was really the financial sector that was the keystone to the global economy. And unless the financial sector shifted the way in which it worked, it was ultimately unlikely that we could fit, if you like, end-of-pipeline solutions across particular sectors.
It was the financial crisis of 2008 that for the first time opened up the possibility for the financial sector to undergo significant changes and overhaul.
But of course, the financial crisis, not about green or societal issues in principle, opened the door to a far greater interest on the part of the policy and regulatory community to shape the financial sector in ways that made sense for where we were all heading.
But yeah, it's true that the crisis, was some kind of a wake-up call and an opportunity also to rethink, our economic model and the finance industry. But wasn't that a missed opportunity?
So yes, to that extent, a missed opportunity, quite apart from the fact that not a single banker ever went to jail, which is a topic perhaps that one might come back to. But I think something else began to happen in that period, which was not so visible, but was really an opening that a number of us took advantage of during the post period, so 2009 to 2012 and beyond, where interventions became increasingly possible. Now, my decision in 2012 was that the solution or the route to addressing financial market change was not through London or through New York, but was through Beijing.
With this goal in mind, changing financial markets, Simon and his family moved to China in 2012. He was convinced that working with Beijing financial regulators was more influential in changing global financial markets than London or Wall Street.
And it turned out that I had what I would call a stroke of luck. Arriving late in 2012, I got up on the morning of January the 13th, 2013, and PM 2.5 in Beijing, so that's a measure of large particulate pollution in the air, reached 960, which is compared to a WHO maximum recommended level of 20. And although people in Beijing were used to air pollution, this was really extraordinary. The air looked and felt like yellow glue. One could see but a few meters in front of one, and really everybody thought they were going to die. It really looked like Armageddon had finally arrived. And what was interesting was that from the day after January the 13th, whoever one went to see, whichever office, whichever ministry, whichever financial institution, whichever regulator one talked to, at whatever level one talked to them, all they wanted to ask was, what do we do about that? And so in a way, when the history of modern green finance is written, that day was the turning point, and really opened the door to the Chinese financial regulators and more broadly government asking a question that no one had ever really asked before, or no one had been willing to ask, which is, what kind of financial system do we need if the transitions we need in the real economy look like this, ... fill in the gaps.
Okay, so Simon, why should people working in finance care about nature?
Well, as a whiz, in everything to do with bringing things that aren't counted into the global economy, there is an instrumental reason and a substantive reason. Yeah, the substantive reason, of course, is that we all care about nature anyway, irrespective of whether we have a suit and a tie on or not. And unlike climate, where climate change is only really something to be feared, we don't have a passion for climate. Actually, nature is quite different.
Yeah.
Because every culture has a passion for nature. And it manifests in different ways. And so one shouldn't discard that important difference between nature and climate.
Yeah, that's true. So it's less of a threat, right?
Yeah, one captures the imagination, reminds one of one's childhood, is where one takes one's children. It's what one wants to bring into one's home. It's where one wants to live. It has a tactile, visceral relationship with who we are and what we are. And the other is just something to be really terribly frightened of. So that's, if you like, the substantive piece. Now let me come on perhaps to the instrumental piece. So it is worth remembering that every dollar, job, and product or service is exclusively made up of nature. Our global economy is 100% comprised of nature, not 5 or 10 or 15 or what the World Economic Forum, helped by PwC, decides is 38.5%. It's 100%. Where does that iPhone come from? Yeah, it's made up of minerals. It required water to make it, air to make it. Its composition is exclusively made up of nature elements. And of course, if one takes, in a sense, the correct biological and scientific stance, we are also nature. And so our own inputs are nature themselves. Now, of course, to take that 100% view, which is technically completely correct, is undisputable, there's nothing beyond nature on our planet, is helpful rhetorically, but not helpful in practice. Yep. Yeah. In other words, that's a mindset shift. But then when folks have picked themselves off the floor, either crying or laughing, they then go, okay, that was amusing, but what does it all actually mean? And of course, the answer is that if we're running a business, or if we work in a financial institution investing in businesses, then most of the economic assets that we're investing in either include nature or natural capital itself, or are to varying different degrees dependent on nature. Yep. So to give an example, the food system is an $8 trillion a year part of our global economy, which approximates $90 trillion. So a very significant part of our global economy. In fact, the largest single chunk, and is highly dependent on nature. Water drought, burnt forests, degraded soil, depleted wetlands that allow ingress of salt water. All of these things make food systems dependent on nature to a very high degree.
That's it. It's like, if it's so essential, how come? I mean, you just say everything we do is based on nature, which sounds so obvious when you say it. How come it's not accounted for anywhere?
Part of that is ignorance, and part of that is to do with the ability to increase profitability by externalizing negative costs. So, for example, an asset management company, I won't bother with names at this point, that is investing in a palm oil company that has operations in Liberia, and that knows that that company is producing palm oil on illegally deforested land, has no credit risk because that company is unlikely to be sued by the Liberian government because regulation is weak, and has no liability risk because anti-money laundering rules only concern the flow of funds, not the fact that there is an environmental crime in your financing value chain. So that asset management company is likely to be entirely aware that it is complicit in the destruction of nature, and the illegal destruction of nature in this case, but its risk management team and its lawyers see absolutely no problem at all. And that's not unusual. That's actually the norm.
The Finance for Biodiversity initiative is trying to change that state of affairs, so that not just banks or investors at the margin, but the whole financial industry starts counting nature fully, both in terms of the risk generating for the financial organization, as well as the contribution of the organization to nature.
So Finance for Biodiversity has a number of different work streams trying to address different ways in which to ensure that nature is countered. And before touching on the crime piece, which I will come back to, it's worth highlighting that there's a bunch of it that sits within what one might broadly call market efficiency measures. So we have been a key player in helping to create the Task Force on Nature-Related Financial Disclosure. What is the job? It is to provide conceptual frameworks, methodologies, data flows that enable financial institutions and non-financial corporations to measure and report on nature-related risks. And that, of course, is principally a conversation between businesses on the ground and the financial community, allowing the financial community to count nature into their asset valuation and allocate and price capital accordingly. So that's not a negative incentive. That's, if you like, a market efficiency measure. Similarly, we are active working with a bunch of folks, sovereign creditors, sovereign debtors, development finance institutions, credit rating agencies, on how to bring natural capital into sovereign debt markets. That is relevant both in pricing risk, but we're also advancing a new class of sovereign debt instrument which links nature performance outcomes to the cost of capital, and pushing that agenda, particularly in the context of the current emerging sovereign debt crisis. So again, incentives and innovation is what that is all about.
Finance for Biodiversity is applying the basics of anti-money laundering laws to financial institutions to clean up benefits coming from biodiversity and nature exploitation. According to the Financial Action Task Force, environmental crime is one of the most profitable criminal enterprises, generating between 110 and 280 billion in criminal gains each year. This covers a wide range of unlawful activities such as illegal logging, illegal wildlife trade, and waste trafficking.
Today, the reality is that an asset manager or a bank or a pension fund, can enhance its profitability of its investments by virtue of the cheaper nature services that the business that it invests in gains because they're accessing it as a result of nature crimes. And my example of Liberia a few minutes earlier illustrates the point. That means, in effect, that the flow of funds, in part, to the legitimate investment, the returns to your pension fund, if you like, in part are being enhanced by translating an environmental crime into clean money. And that, without a great stretch of the imagination, is what we understand as money laundering. And yet, that way of thinking about the way in which legitimate investments benefit from nature crimes is not considered money laundering today.
But I thought that was really smart. I had never seen that. I had never seen the argument made that way before. That's new, right?
There are a number of strains of work about the legal constructs for thinking about nature. At the very bottom of the pile is the enforcement of classical environmental regulation, and that shouldn't be forgotten, even though one is thinking of more exotic things. Further upstream, we see a growing interest in the so-called legal personhood of nature. It means that nature itself has a quote-unquote right to be heard, translates into a legal framework that considers not only environmental damage, but the right of nature to exist over the long term into the future. And that changes the way in which liability is understood and, if you like, calculated, because it drives a forward-looking view as to what sustaining nature would mean in practice and drives that into law. So just 2 days ago, in fact, the Supreme Court in Ecuador found that the government of Ecuador did not have the right to overrule the interests of indigenous communities in allocating oil and gas drilling rights to companies. A very interesting clash of two different sets of laws, one of which is the allocation of mining rights, effectively, which a government normally has, and the second is the Supreme Court's consideration of what the legal rights of indigenous communities really have. So I think I and folks that I work with see the legal sphere not just being as a sort of monoculture way of trying to force people to do A, B, or C, but an area of enormous innovation in itself. And the nature crime piece that I described is the piece in particular that F4B is seeking to push forward.
Yeah, that's super interesting because that's a completely different change of mindset.
You know, for those of us who watched COP26 in Glasgow, we will have noted with interest the success in advancing what you might call the agenda of voluntary carbon markets. With large corporations that can't immediately go down to zero emissions, putting out often significant amounts of money to buy low-cost carbon mitigation opportunities in other contexts, so-called offset market. Mm-hmm. And there's much debate as to whether this is good or bad, and I'm not going to address that debate right now. Now, what's really going on today in the light of the emergence of voluntary carbon markets is a largely predatory rush by financial sector actors to buy low-cost carbon offtakes from communities or local authorities or private owners of nature assets that neither have the information nor the capability to negotiate a good deal. Mm-hmm. So what that tells us, in a nutshell, similar to the other work we're doing, that it's great for there to be market innovation. It's important to be able to value nature, and all of these things are part and parcel of what we need to be encouraging in different ways. But that actually, as always, good governance counts.
Yeah, exactly.
And establishing the right rules of the road are going to be critical if nature financing and nature markets are going to be part of the solution rather than part of the problem.
I want to make a difference. I care about nature. What should I be doing in my organization? What would be your recommendations in terms of how to even start going in the right direction?
So the good news is you can start with very little, and you can start exactly where you are. So let me spell that out. Firstly, if you're already working on climate, then there are aspects of what you are doing that will already be helping you understand, if you look, what your nature dependencies and impacts really are. Mm-hmm. So there's already work within the climate space, within the methodologies that you have developed, within the TCFD reporting requirements and so on and so forth, that already covers part of the nature story. So that's number one. Number two, you can look across your entire portfolio from a top-down view, so without a lot of new methodologies or buying a lot of new data or building a lot of new capabilities, by connecting together three sets of largely publicly available data. Yeah, one is looking at the sector distribution of your portfolio. The second is looking at the jurisdictional distribution of your portfolio. And the third is adding in data sets that are available that speak to the degree of effective environmental enforcement in each of those jurisdictions. And if you take those three viewpoints and you connect them together from a pure top-down, so you're not doing any project analysis, you will already have a feel for what your level of nature dependency is and where there is likely to be material risk because of weak environmental enforcement in the countries in which you are investing.
There are indeed actions that one can take today to make a difference. You can draw on the work of the Task Force on Nature-Related Financial Disclosures, TNFD. In mid-March, the TNFD will release its first framework to help financial institutions build a clear picture of what their nature dependencies, impacts, and material risks look like.
You can join one of many emerging groups of financial institutions that are experimenting on the use of TNFD's work. It is worthwhile to educate yourself a little bit as to what nature is really about. You know, it isn't just about a forest. One has to come down, not to become a PhD scientist, but one has to come down to a level where one has a better grasp on what the different elements of nature really are. Now, TNFD's framework will provide a set of definitions and concepts, but actually it is a moment to go back to school. But just to give a feel as to what nature is really all about will help you over time talk to your children more effectively and inform the way in which you make investment decisions. So educate yourself about the nature of nature.
And if I am a student of INSEAD or any other business schools, right, and I care also, and I'm trying to find a job or a company that will be meaningful, how do I select the right institution to join so that they mean it? I mean, how do I weed out all the, greenwasher?
One of the hottest labor markets is for people in the nature finance area. So many financial institutions are trying to draw in people that know something about the topic because they can see that they need to build capabilities in advance of the storm. And the storm is clearly coming: regulation, reputation, litigation, credit risk, and so on. There's a really hot labor market for you to be part of. Now, how to choose, since you have choice, because it's a supplier's market right now. Clearly, the way to look at financial institutions, like the way one looks at many other things, is to look at the company they keep. Yeah. So, are they part of the TNFD process? Are the partnerships they have with environmental organizations superficial and philanthropic, or are they serious about what they're actually doing with their portfolio? Do they have a good track record in addressing climate issues? Because if so, they're more likely to have a good track record or real ambition to address nature issues. Are they financial institutions that have significant investments in nature at risk economic assets? You know, if you're only investing in Google and other tech stocks, yes, nature is important, but you're probably a long way away from doing anything about it. Whereas if you're investing in soya value chains, you're in a very different state of mind. So look at the portfolio and choose an organization that is likely to be investing in sectors where nature is a visible piece of the value creation process.
You just said that nature and finance is the hottest employment area right now. If you had a key message to leave to our students, I mean, what would that be?
I think you've got to decide where you like to be on the innovation curve. Yeah, and we all have different personality types, appetite for risk, willingness to work in confusion, ability to innovate, and so on. So the nature finance space has now moved into the rapidly rising part of the innovation curve. Whereas, for example, many aspects of the carbon agenda, not the overall climate agenda, are already flatlining into sort of commoditized approaches to green bonds and indexes and so on and so forth. I think for those who have an appetite for exploration and innovation and risk-taking, now is the time to get into the nature finance space. For those who like a more stable environment, even if they're interested and committed to environmental issues, probably the nature finance space is going to be too chaotic for the next 5 years to satisfy your personality type.
What are your biggest hopes for 2022 on this agenda of finance and nature?
Without doubt, what has helped us to push the climate agenda into the financial community has been what happened in Paris in 2015.
Yeah.
A credible global goal was set, and that has influenced the way in which the financial community assesses transition risk and therefore builds future climate change into their current financing decisions. One of my great hopes is that we can pull off a comparable success in the nature space.
Mission to Change is a podcast by the INSEAD Hoffman Global Institute for Business and Society in collaboration with INTEND. Created and produced by Human Humans. Original music, sound design, and mixing by Palomino. Special thanks to Isabelle Stark and Maria Latore.